it's very strong in biblical theology. Our classic evangelism courses that we use around the place are strong on a propositional kind of evangelism where you put forward an idea. You might say, God created the world, right? And then the people in the room have to match that up or challenge their own presuppositions. What ideas do they have about how the world, was made? So it's a kind of conceptual, idea-based wrestle with the gospel. But Good News series is much stronger on storytelling. And I think that works because that's often how we speak in culture, but also because in collectivist societies, it's not as if people are sitting around having existential, conceptual thoughts about everyone's individual expression or understanding. It's kind of given. You're born into a culture and a religion, and often that's not questioned or expressed in a conceptual way.
Yeah, and I think I read recently that was Jeri Jones Sparks talking about her new course, Good News. I'm Pete Hughes, and you've clicked on the Reach Australia podcast. This season, we are looking at different evangelistic tools to fill your missional toolbox with as many resources as possible. South Asia has become the leading source of migrants to Australia, surpassing a whole bunch of other regions. This shift presents a unique opportunity for those sharing the gospel, as we've got cultural differences that may create barriers to understanding or require clearer explanations. Jeri and her father have been developing a new evangelism course set to launch later in 2025, specifically designed for people with a South Asian background. And we join the conversation as Jeri explains what she means by South Asian.
Yeah. South Asia is a relatively newish industry term that we used to use a phrase like subcontinental. So we're thinking the brown part of Asia. So India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Nepal, etc.
Okay. So as a white person, I'm saying South Asia.
Yeah.
I've just got to make sure that I have this continual paranoia that I'm going to say something that sounds remotely racist, and I don't intend to.
South Asia's good. It's very neutral. It's very inviting.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. All right. Now, you're developing a tool for the people of South Asia who've come to Australia particularly. Why is it so important that we develop evangelistic tools for people from South Asia?
Well, it's our largest growing migrant group in Australia. It used to be England and then China overtook, but at the last census, India is the highest growing migration population. And actually, by capita, Nepal is huge in numbers in migration.
It is the biggest influx of people into Australia. And some people, sometimes don't realise that. They still think it might be China or some other Eastern Asian country.
Yes.
But it really is the South Asian that is becoming a big shaper of Australian culture.
Yeah. And you'll notice even if you watch an ad on telly, if anyone watches telly anymore these days, you'll see many more South Asian faces represented. Our whole population is becoming more and more diverse. 51% of Australia is born outside of Australia. So we're an increasingly multicultural nation. And South Asia in particular is, I think, underserved and underrepresented in ministry spaces. If you look at our local churches, we're seeing very, very few South Asians. And if we are seeing South Asians, they might already be Christians when they come over. So
now, just to explain, in case some people don't know you, you have a South Asian background.
Yes.
Just to make that clear.
That.
No, that's all right. I just realised I can see that, but not everyone can.
I was born in Chennai. I speak Tamil.
Yeah. So you weren't born in I just assumed you were born in Australia.
I was born in Chennai, came to Australia when I was 4.
Okay.
But my mother did not allow us to speak English at home, which I'm very grateful for. So I kept my language.
Excellent. Jeri, there are a lot of courses, there's tools for evangelism and explaining the gospel. Why don't they work for people from South Asia? Or maybe they do, but why did you feel the need to create a new tool particularly suited towards people from South Asia?
Yeah. I think what churches are currently using isn't quite working. We're seeing that in the numbers of people coming to Christ and their backgrounds. And I didn't really go out to create a new thing. This is a family thing. My dad developed this over the last 15 years, and he has seen a lot of people come to Christ. And there's traction there. And so he's handed over to me to scale and develop as a video evangelism course. But I have seen the gaps in some of the courses that we use. I can speak into some of the barriers that majority church culture doesn't quite understand, I think, for the most part. So the first is there's a historical thing. India was colonized by Britain over the last 100 years and still feeling the impacts of that. India used to be one of the wealthiest nations in the globe, and then after Britain left, not quite the case.
Britain did take a lot of stuff from a lot of things, and I say that as someone who's got a British heritage, so I understand. Yep, I'll accept that. Yep.
And the influence of the British Raj and missionary activity in India is often collapsed together. And I think it's actually quite a complex and rich history what has happened in India. But the generalized narrative is Christianity equals colonization, and that's bad. So there's a lot of baggage there. And it's really interesting because Nepal, which has never been colonized, we're seeing a lot of missional traction with Nepali migrants in Australia, and I think that's part of the package. And then there's also a current socio-political climate at the moment. So, I want to speak about this carefully because I don't want to make generalizations, but for the most part, there's a lot of hostility and pushback against Christianity and Christian influence. There's a very strong sentiment coming from politics that India should be a Hindu nation and that's India's roots. And there's almost a reshaping of a narrative happening at the moment, which is quite confronting because, almost all historians agree that Thomas went to South India right after Jesus rose from the dead. So Christianity has been in India for a long, long time.
Yeah, and we are, just to make that clear, because some people, I've talked with people about this. And, we're talking about Thomas the Apostle.
The Apostle.
Not Thomas who was a bit later on or some other not Thomas Aquinas. Right? Thomas the Apostle actually, ended up in India.
Christianity went to India and Ethiopia before it went to Europe. Like, it's a really long heritage. But that socio-political climate has led to not only just informal pushback, but there are anti-conversion laws and the persecution rate in India is going up and up. It's becoming a more and more dangerous place for Christians to be. And that's influencing the minds and understanding of migrants coming over here as well. So there's double pushback and suspicion against Christianity. And then there's an interconnectedness of religion and culture. I'll just speak for Indians at the moment because it's a very Hindu nation. That isn't quite true for our East Asian neighbours. So Hinduism and Indian culture is very, very interwoven. And so if the gospel feels like it's challenging the faith, it feels like it's challenging your whole self and your whole cultural identity, and unraveling that can be quite confronting and complex. And that's something that our East Asian neighbours, especially those from China, there's often a bit of an agnostic vacuum where spirituality might be. And so when they find Christ, it's like, oh, this is what I've been missing. This is what I've been looking for. But the wrestle for Indians is much more complex.
So you've developed a new course called Good News, which is, seems like you put what's on the label, what's in the box, so to speak. Just talk us through a little bit about how does that work? I realise at the moment it's still in development, but just give us a picture of how does that actually work? Yeah.
Well, Good News series starts with the bad news for the first 4 weeks and then leads you to the good news for the next 4 weeks. It's an 8-week video evangelism course. And like I might have mentioned earlier, this is kind of a grassroots evangelism thing that my dad has been working on.
And he's been doing that for a while, hasn't he?
15 years.
Yeah, that's
seeing lots of gospel fruit from that. And so we want to scale this a bit further. You can access that once it's live through the website, goodnewsseries.org, and there's a portal there which will give you access to the videos for free. But let me tell you a little bit about what makes it a bit unique or different. It's very strong in biblical theology. Our classic evangelism courses that we use around the place are strong on a propositional kind of evangelism where you put forward an idea. You might say, God created the world, right? And then the people in the room have to match that up or challenge their own presuppositions. What ideas do they have about how the world, was made? So it's a kind of conceptual, idea-based wrestle with the gospel. But Good News series is much stronger on storytelling. And I think that works because that's often how we speak in culture, but also because in collectivist societies, it's not as if people are sitting around having existential, conceptual thoughts about everyone's individual expression or understanding. It's kind of given. You're born into a culture and a religion, and often that's not questioned or expressed in a conceptual way.
Yeah, and I think I read recently that, particularly in collectivist societies, that is how information is transferred, is through stories. That's just, we're sitting around sitting around the fire, telling stories, and that's how information is passed on. So it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and most of the Bible is story, isn't it? And how Jesus expressed the gospel largely through story. So that's interesting. I think it's emotionally compelling, and this is something that we can often miss it, engaging the whole person. We tend to be a little bit cognitive and heady in the Western mindset. So that's helpful. We've got some powerful testimonies in there, and all the illustrations used are quite emotionally moving and powerful. And it's got a really clear and faithful gospel presentation. It's a reformed in tradition, and we're also very careful about not causing unnecessary offense. So we're very careful about what language we use. We use a very neutral name for God, not the hyper-Christian name for God, for example. And so we're just careful about imagining any possible offense that a person could take to an illustration or expression. We've got line by line in the script, and making sure if anything causes offense, it's just the gospel itself and not clumsy expressions or words.
So when you mean hyper-Christianized word for God, are we talking Jesus, or is it? Just talk me through that just for a second.
The pilot's in Tamil, so I was referencing that. In Tamil, there's lots of different words you can use for God.
Right.
And there's a word that classically Christians would use, and then there's a more neutral, broad word. So we've gone for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the pilot's in Tamil.
Yeah.
Is the plan to have it in other languages as well?
This is a great question because this is something I've wrestled with this last few years as I've developed it. I went in, Pete, being so idealistic because I think in an ideal world, everyone hears the gospel in their heart language, right? But when I think about our scope for this, I'm thinking, okay, the primary audience is the Aussie church. I want to help resource and serve them. And when I think about where we are, and I just think, maybe the next one actually needs to be an accessible English with, multicultural faces and keeping that cultural resonance high, but in English. I think that's partly because there's always a wrestle between contextualization and integration into local churches. So often highly contextualized ministries might struggle to integrate their people on a pathway into your classic local church. And a classic local church might struggle to reach their neighbours in a contextualised way. So I'm hoping to hit a sweet spot in between there where, we can reach more people from different backgrounds in a compelling way, but we're connecting them in early to a local church family.
So talk me through what it's a 8-session kind of thing.
Yeah. What
does it kind of look like on the night, so to speak? For example, how important is things like food?
Very, very important. Please don't do it without food. Run it like any other evangelism course. You connect over food. You hear from the presentation, a video in this case, and then you discuss it with the provided outlines around tables. We're planning also to have training for leaders, and our plan is with this pilot is to have a bit of a coaching cohort to people who sign up to try it. So we can learn from it, so they can learn from it. That's the idea.
That sounds very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, You've talked a little bit about, that follow-up process of integrating someone into church, local church. What could that look like?
Yeah, I think like any good follow-up looks like, but the relational depth and support really does have to be there. We want it to be slow and gentle. I think when we see people, especially from a Hindu background, coming to faith, the pieces that fall into place for their faith may not be in the order that we imagine. Yeah, there are unique and heavy challenges for people from a Hindu background when they come to Christ. Because the culture and the faith is so interwoven, even if that person is starting to understand, actually, I can still hold on to my culture while following Jesus, their family are not going to understand that. And that's really difficult. We've had lots of stories where, some family relationships have been irreversibly damaged. Family separation, like really heavy stuff, real carrying the cross stuff that most Anglo people, when they come to Christ, don't have to wrestle with.
I think it's important to hear, if you're an Anglo minister, gospel worker, to hear that it has to be slow and gentle and to have that patience. So, that's a really important moment, I think, that because again, with Anglos, we tend to kind of rush people through a process. To actually slow down and go, actually, this is going to take a lot longer. I think that's a really helpful thing to hear along the way.
Yeah, and it reminds us to believe in the power of the Holy Spirit who's at work. It actually, I need to confess, it's quite a discouraging process being patient, because it feels like the people you're walking alongside take 2 steps back before they take a step forward, and then another 2 steps back. So, it takes months and years usually.
Yeah. Although I think I've been challenged on some of the patient things and going, actually, I've just got to, it's just a reminder for me to stop and go, I've got to be in step with God and his timing rather than expecting God's going to be in step with my timing along the way. So I don't know whether that's an encouraging thing or whether that's just me growing as a Christian. I don't know.
Probably both.
Probably both. Okay. I know the course hasn't quite come out yet, but you and your father have been doing this for a little while. Have you got a story of someone's life being changed by this course?
So many stories.
That's exciting to hear.
One's in my own family, which is where it all started, our extended family. I will sob if I tell those. Let me tell you a more recent one.
Sure, that can get a bit awkward on a podcast, so let's go with that one.
So in the process of developing this course, there was a process where my dad at a local Tamil congregation preached through it on a Sunday, and then we had the audio recordings and we needed to get that transcribed. And that was quite a challenge because none of the AI worked, because the Tamil we're using is very commonplace Tamil that we want anyone to access. And apparently all the data that AI has is very, very formal, and it just didn't work. And we found that the simplest thing we could do was through some friends' connections, ask someone in India actually to translate it for us. This was a guy in uni who was just doing this as a side gig. That was fantastic. So he's doing this work at home, and he's got the audio playing out loud, and he's typing away, doing the transcript. And his mum is so engaged and enthralled, and she'd never heard the gospel be expressed in this way. It was like evangelism training for her. And before this guy finished transcribing the course, his mum had led 3 people to Christ.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I you know what? I hear stories like that, and I just keep getting amazed by the way God uses incredible moments just to go, you've got your plans and that's the thing, but I'm just going to show you I can help people come to know me in a whole bunch of different ways. That's a great story.
So good.
Jeri, thank you very much for joining us. Just quickly, when can we expect to see Good News come out?
Hoping by the end of July. That is the plan. Though video production has taken longer than I imagined. But
always does.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Excellent. Okay. That was Jeri Jones Sparks. And as was mentioned, the course is due to come out later in 2025, so keep an eye out for it on goodnewsseries.org. In the meantime, have a think about the people who are in your area who may not have the same type of faith as you do, and how you might help them come to know the good news of Jesus. But whatever you do something. I'm Pete Hughes. Chat soon.